Hello and welcome to Radical Engagements here at Varn Blog. And today I'm talking about Abundance, Big Tech's Bid for the Democratic Party by Kate Willett. Now, this one's recorded relatively close to when I'm releasing it, which is rare for Radical Engagements. And the reason why it is actually an accident on my part. I simply forgot to create the Thursday episode and didn't want to rearrange several months worth of future episodes. But also, I wanted to highlight an article that was relatively recent. It's only about a month and a week old. And it's about a topic that is still pretty pertinent. And how I found this article is interesting. All right. So it is from the New International, a magazine that I am theoretically on the contributing editorial board for. Now, I think my technical position is like advisor on U.S. politics and education. And I have wrote one article with A.M. Gimlets over Andy of Antifada over there as well. It's one of two publications I have a formal relationship with. I also have a formal relationship with Strange Matters magazine. But nonetheless, I actually didn't discover this by that. I was listening to I Hate Bill Maher, the podcast, and Kate Willett was a guest hating on Bill Maher. Not particularly relevant to us here, but through that podcast, I found the podcast she co-hosts with Emil Torres on the tech industry's ideological projects, Dystopia Now. Listened to several episodes and thought it was quite relevant. And then I realized I'd heard Kate's name before. Now, she's an actor, so that may have been it. But no, I remembered that I had recently looked over an article by her at the New International. Wasn't the editor on it. Had nothing to do with its editorial process, but I had seen it. So I wanted to talk about it. And it gave me a reason to hate on Ezra Klein. Something that I kind of enjoy doing. Let's get into the article. Abundance, Big Tech's bid for the Democratic Party. The tech right has gained major influence in Washington by funding Republicans. The Abundance faction has taken a different route, funding Democrats. Which is interesting because Big Tech also has had an interesting relationship to the Democrats. After all, I mean, Elon Musk's extreme wealth is partly related to the SpaceX contracts he got under Obama. In his conversation on the Doom Scroll podcast, I also have to mention that Centrilla, one of the hosts of Doom Scroll, has been on this podcast. Ezra Klein has made his relationship with Big Tech clear. Quote, I think there are too few visions of the future. I think of Mark Andreessen as my counterpart, the person I am sparring with a little bit more. Andreessen is a Trump-supporting venture capitalist who wrote the Techno-Optimist Manifesto, a call for a tech-driven free market future. Klein's Abundance, co-written with Derick Thompson, attempts to bring aspects of Andreessen's vision to the Democrats. Klein and Andreessen are both immensely pro-growth, true believers in the transformative power of innovation. Andreessen is a key figure on the tech right, Silicon Valley's rising authoritarian and anarcho-capitalist wing. Klein is a liberal. Andreessen now advises on Doge and is a patron of Curtis Yarvin, the self-styled philosopher advocating for CEO monarchs to replace democratically elected leaders. Yarvin himself got the idea from Hans Hermann Hoppe, over at the Van Mises Institute a while back. Hoppe is less esoteric than Yarvin, less given to neo-reactionaryism. And instead, what he proposed was just quite simple. Feudalism is the privatization of government. Privatization is capitalism, therefore it's good. Therefore, feudalism is a real capitalist form of government. Now, Yarvin basically agrees with that, and you see this in a CEO monarch's thought. but he is more arcane and esoteric than that. And ties in a lot more different kinds of leaders, from Nick Land to Carl Schmitt. None of. But anyway, and I do think neo-reaction a la Curtis Jarvin and Nick Land ended up being the most prominent form of the quote alt-right unquote, predominantly because it flattered people with money in the ways the other forms of the alt-right didn't. Okay. And was semi-compatible with some elements of anarcho-capitalism. But anyway, let's get back to this. Abundance isn't just an airport book. It's a press release for a collection of think tanks who are fighting to win, quote, a battle for the future of the Democratic Party, a future that the tech right billionaires can get behind. And it's interesting because this is partly about the Democrats getting more funders. And I think this has to be pointed out. All right. This won't be a review of Abundance. There are many good ones exist. Its policy ideas are standard left-center technocratic fare, Cash Sunstein, but with AI glosses. Some enacted under Biden, others proposed by Harris. Most would help modestly, though likely less than the author claims. Instead, I want to focus on the groups, as Klein would say. He's criticized the groups for their influence on the Democratic politics, even blaming them for Kamala Harris's 2024 loss. Wow, that's a stretch. But his target seems to be certain groups, immigrants' rights groups, LGBT and environmental groups, and the ACLU. Klein's abundance agenda is just as group-driven by third-way neoliberals, the ghost of Bill Bradley, and I guess Bill Clinton, although Bill Clinton's not dead. The third-way neoliberals, by the way, have a long tradition going back to the late 70s in the Democratic Party. Carter was a precursor, although he wasn't one of them. And Gary Hart's congressional career starts around that time, and he is and was one of them. And more troublingly, Silicon Valley's ascendant illiberal faction, which would prefer to exit democracy altogether. The think tanks. To understand the politics of the abundance agenda, look at the San Francisco Bay Area, where tech billionaire-backed groups successfully took over the city's Democratic Party. They ousted a Democratic Socialist from the Board of Supervisors and helped elect a tech-aligned, right-leaning Democrats. In a state as blue as California, even conservatives run as Democrats, many backed by donors who fund Republicans nationally. What began as the Yes in My Backyard, YIMBY project's narrow focus on zoning reforms, thank you, Matt Iglesias' favorite bugbear, evolved into a sweeping pro-growth neoliberal and socially moderate brand of politics. Abundance now serves as a rallying cry for a new kind of Democrat. Techno-optimistic, skeptical of government, supportive of a well-styled state only when it comes with harsh restrictions. Yay! Even more means testing. Such an efficient use of fucking time and resources. Anyway, this agenda has been disastrous for San Francisco's poor and working class. I mean, they basically have left the city, except for the people who are so poor that they don't have a home anymore. Mayor London Breed, who tech-backed abundance group campaigned for, successfully petitioned the Supreme Court to further allow the criminalization of homelessness, even when no shelter is available. And the shelter projects that California has always used has been on a neoliberal model, not on a Fordist one. Not that I love Fordism either, but this is neither here nor there, where they throw lots of money at NGOs who inefficiently don't really help with the problem. And they do spend tons of money on NGOs to help with homelessness that are totally ineffective. Which, of course, makes these moderate centrist think tanks look good. All right. Let's go back here. Back to Kate Willett's article. Now, a group of think tanks and billionaires is mounting the same AstroTurf strategy nationally. On their book tour, Thompson and Klein sound less like journalists and more like spokespeople for these groups, repeating polished talking points about the enemies of the abundance are leftist, and who isn't to blame after all, oligarchs. Now, I will tell you, I have hated Matt Iglesias since before Vox existed. I had hated Matt Iglesias back when he worked for Think Progress. I've hated Matt Iglesias for well over 20 years. And Ezra Klein has always been an interesting figure. He's not as open as Iglesias about courting all this centrist, neoliberal nonsense. But Klein has always sounded reasonable until you actually looked at what he's done. And I started noticing this when he would talk about AI and putting Biden government people in on AI, and noticing he took everything they said at complete face value. Did not look at the market trends in AI, did not look at the complications with AI, etc., etc. All right. And in short, Ezra Klein made Ed Citron spin in his chair. Ed Citron's very much not dead, so he can't spin in his grave. All right, back to this. The Cannon Center outlined a plan for its allied groups to attempt something like a Democratic leadership council. Yay! The Atari Democrats' favorite thing, which fought and won a battle for the neoliberal takeover of the Democratic Party in the 90s. And that was about a decade and a half project, to be completely honest. So for those of you who are thinking that we are probably going to get something like Bernie Sanders would say, oust these ancient California and New York Democrats, if by nothing else, since time's killing a lot of them at this point, since they're in their 80s, well, you're about to see a fight between several groups. Now, I am actually a critic of Bernie Sanders' critique of the oligarchy because I find some things a little bit more suspect now than others. But I do think this is an interesting point when you look at who's actually funding what's going on in the Democratic Party. If the battle of the future is between AOC and Slotkin, Slotkin's definitely got a lot more money and a lot more of these groups behind them. So let's talk about which these groups are. Thank you, Kate Willett, for bringing it up. The Foundation for American Innovation, the Center for New Liberalism, the Nakanen Center, Breakthrough Institute, the Inclusive Abundance Initiative, the Abundance Network, the Abundance Institute, and the Institute for Progress. While some of these groups reflect third-rate neoliberalism reminiscent of the Clinton or Obama eras, other of these groups tied to founders and ideas rooted in the tech right, a reactionary ring of Silicon Valley associated with Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, David Sachs, and Balaji Srinivasan, I think. The tech right promotes eugenics, pronatalism, cryptocurrency, charter cities, network states, and anti-wokeness. It envisions a techno-authoritarian state powered by AI that protects capital over civil liberties. The tech right has shaped the Republican Party, and when the abundance faction is trying to reshape the Democrats. And by the way, since tech is involved, and there's a feedback loop with government and tech, these tech developers almost all became powerful because of government contracts. This is not like, classical barons of industry that come to be through their own primitive innovation and take over time. They had protection from the state and work from the state that enabled them to come to power. Now, that was actually true for a lot of the 19th century barons of industry. I'm going to mix the two phrases because I think robber baron is closer to the truth, but I'll take the captain of industry and make it an evil baron. Sure. The barons of industry of the 19th century also did a lot of the same thing. So, but there was a little bit more sense that at least those guys came from nothing backgrounds, which is actually somewhat true. That's not true for almost any of our tech people today. We have our South African PayPal mafia and its prior generational founding to look at for that. Anyway, what follows is a closer look at the abundance organizations, funders, and ideas, and whether influence in the Democratic Party is cause for alarm, particularly since they have more money and are likely to win. All right. The Foundation for American Innovation, Freedom Cities, and Right Abundance. Patrick Friedman, yes, that Patrick Friedman. He's a guy who I know from the aughts and early aught teens who wanted to build technocratic seastead utopias to get out of all kinds of problems with local zoning who is the grandson of good old friend of the podcast and Chicago boy Milton Friedman. Grandson of the neoliberal high priest, Milton Friedman doesn't worry about losing his Tesla key. It's implanted in his hand. Quote, I've gotten in the habit of getting crazy medical treatments here, he tells an interviewer from Reason Magazine, showing off his subdermal ID chip under a badge. 2 trips ago, I got gene therapy to make me stronger and faster. Last trip, I had my mouth bacteria replaced with genetically engineered ones, so I'll never get cavities. Prospera is a privately run city in a ZEDE, a special economic zone carved out of the Honduran territory, a city run like a business designed to attract foreign capital. Decisions aren't made at a ballot box, they are made by Prospera Inc. It's a real-world Galt's Gulch, a libertarian fantasy lifted from Ayn Rand's Atlas Slugged, where crypto barons and venture capitalists escape taxes, regulations, and the social contract. Friedman backed Prospera through his firm, Pronomos Capital, alongside tech right billionaires like Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, and Balaji Srivastava. Now, I have been following Peter Friedman before I was even a leftist, and I like I said, I remember when he wanted to seastead these kinds of cities in the open ocean, and I guess he decided it was just easier to convince Central American countries to let them build cities in special economic zones and try to, deal with floating cities in an ever turbulent ocean. I met Friedman in 2009 at Ephemeral, a floating party hosted by the Seasetting Institute. Here we go. Thank you, Kate, for bringing it up. The Thiel-funded nonprofit Friedman co-founded to build the libertarian ocean cities in international waters. The event took place on a makeshift flotilla in the Sacramento Delta, decorated with Burning Man style, and populated by engineers doing lines in the porta potties. Back then, an anarcho-capitalist exit seemed like a nutty pipe dream for Thiel, who declared, I no longer believe freedom and democracy are compatible. Instead of relocating to the high seas or Mars by 2016, Thiel was speaking at the Republican National Convention. In 2023, then candidate Donald Trump floated the idea of creating freedom cities on federal land. As in Prospera, founders who could experiment with defense tech, biotech, nuclear power, skyscrapers, and special economic zones. The tech right saw the political possibilities. As historian Quinn Slobodian writes in Cracked Up Capitalism, decent book, by the way, people should read it. Once flows flee to new low-tax, unregulated zones, the theory goes, nonconforming economies will be forced to emulate those anomalies. By starting small, the zone sets out a model for a new end state for all. This is what special economic zones were always designed to do, by the way. As for now, the Freedom Cities Coalition, New Way Capital, Pronomos Capital, the Frontier Foundation, the Charter Cities Institute, the Housing Center at American Enterprise Institute, and the Foundation for American Innovation, FAI, are among the groups lobbying Trump to make campaign promise a reality. FAI is a core abundance agenda think tank that's pretty open about its tech right affiliations, even publishing a tech right gift guide for the holidays. They co-hosted the Abundance 2024 conference, a gathering where the Abundance Agenda organizations mingled, shared policy ideas, and politically strategized. And this is why you should never trust Klein and Iglesias and Thompson. But I hate to tell you, and I hate to tell all my Democratic Socialist friends, they are more likely to win, at least within the Democratic Party, if you do not mount a massive counteroffensive that cannot be captured within the Democratic Party, which is one of the limits of the Bernie strategy and always has been. And no, I am not talking about a failed executive-run third-party campaign. That's not what I'm mentioning here. All right. The event was emceed by the host of FAI's podcast, The Realignment, and included their chief economist, Samuel Hammond, a Project 2025 contributor, and the author of the EA, Effective Altruism, Case for Trump. So all these guys, I mean, these guys have been Democrats in the past, too, some of them, and this is something you guys need to realize, all right? This is a coterie of people that has an allegiance with all elements of power, and little grassroots thing is not going to out-leverage them just by fucking rallies. All right. FAI played a central role in organizing the Reboot 2024 conference, which featured tech right leaders along with established conservatives, two factions in increasingly close alignment. Reboot featured sessions on topics as the new politics of Christo, the artificial intelligence and Leviathan, and the population implosion. Speakers included Rehan Salam, president of the Manhattan Institute, the new Manhattan Institute. That's been fun. Gary Tan, CEO of Y Combinator and early Palantir employee, and Mike Solana, the CEO of Teal's Founders Fund, and several other Teal associates. The event received funding from Sovereign House, eventually said to be backed by Teal and his house philosopher Curtis Yarvin. I mean, I guess they didn't pick Nick Land because he did too much meth in China. But anyway, a software engineer, allegedly, a software engineer who spent a decade advocating the dismantling of the administrative state via a four-letter agency and sounds suspiciously like Doge. The surprise guest of the conference was Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation and chief architect of Project 2025. The techno-libertarians have come a long way since stumbling off floating platforms in the Sacramento Delta. Institute for Progress towards Techtopia. About an hour from San Francisco, framers in Solana County spent months speculating about who was secretly scooping up massive swaths of land. A corporate farming behemoth, a real estate developer planning suburban sprawl, Disney building a theme park, a hostile foreign adversary trying to kill everyone, worse, tech billionaires preparing their utopia. The project, dubbed California Forever, could have been a charter city, a dense, walkable urban paradise that would make Yimbys weep with joy, but the secrecy surrounding the land grab, along with the lawsuits filed against farmers who refused to sell, did little to win hearts and minds. The fact that Patrick Collision, Mark Andreessen, Reid Hoffman, and other tech billionaires are behind the company town just creep people out. As Gil Duran noted in the New Republic, the project mirrored Balaji Srinivasan's network state vision. The billionaire investors not only hope to reimagine urban planning, but also experiment with new forms of government. A tech bro Eden with CEO gods. After years of secretly buying up land and a year-long public campaign, the development faced so much opposition from locals that the billionaire scraped the rezoning ballot measure, a tech utopian vision thwarted by zoning once again. This is why they like YIMBYism, by the way. It's not because they really want to build more houses at lower prices. They know it won't work. Those houses will be bought by investment firms. The investors are now considering a pivot to shipbuilding. One of the California Forever billionaires, Patrick Collision, CEO of Stripe, looms large in the abundance world. Along with open philanthropy, he donated a fund of $20 million to the abundance grant tied to Klein's book release. The fact that Klein gets to do this and hide behind the fact he's a moderate liberal at the New York Times and a founder of the sensible liberal publication Vox really pisses me off. But nonetheless, Collision is a key backer and inspiration for the Institute for Progress, the IFP, a think tank which works closely with others in the Abundance Network, including the Abundance 2024 conference. Collision co-founded Progress Studies with the economist Tyler Cowen. Born from their Atlantic article, We Need a New Science of Progress. Now, I don't always hate Tyler Cowen. I think he's a kind of a useful villain. But I'll come back to that later. Cohen's not a tech optimist, which is why it's interesting that he's involved in this. All right. While IFP isn't officially a progress studies think tank, its mission aligns closely and it's received funding from both Collision and Emergent Ventures. Cohen's Mercatus Center grant program established with funding from Teal, Klein, and Thompson were interviewed by Collision on their book tour. And I think that's important because, like I said, I don't hate Tyler Cohen, but he's got ties to people I do not trust. See Teal. Teal money is in so many different spots in the political world. I mean, I will sometimes wonder if Teal's going to be the last versions of the right's obsession with George Soros. But the thing is that Soros does fun things and has been up to sketchy stuff. But he's not really guilty of a lot of what he's accused of being, even if he has funded people on the left and the center. Teal is kind of guilty of some of the things he's accused of. So anyway, Cohen has his own interest in the network state style projects. Yeah, I do want to know what they are because, like I said, he's not a techno optimist, so his take on this has got to be different. I didn't know this. Balaji Srivastava, a cryptocurrency billionaire and Prospero funder, defines the network state as a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world. Crowdfunds territory. Okay. Man, if I was some sovereign nation states, I'd be scared of these guys buying my stuff. Anyway, in this alternative government structure, tech elites would create private blockchain-based enclaves. Srivastava calls them tech Zionism. Lovely. Great. Gross. Network states are founded on empty land or by buying over an existing city, as network state evangelists have attempted in San Francisco. Srinivasan has called for ethnically cleansing San Francisco of non-tech people. Cohen is an early backer of Praxis alongside Srivastava and Thiel. Praxis describes itself as a grassroots movement of modern pioneers aiming to build an autonomous cryptocurrency city. It's the cryptocurrency part that ties Cohen in. Got it. Initial plans were proposed by a Mediterranean location, but fast fell. The Praxis CEO tweeted, "I went to Greenland to try to buy it. Greenland, however, reiterated that the country is not for sale." So that's maybe where Trump got his idea from. Cohen has been a protege and friend of Thiel, citing him as a major influence. Now, this is interesting. I did not realize this. I've read a lot of Cohen's middle period books. He advocated a form of government called state capacity libertarianism. That I knew, which, unlike anarcho-capitalism, has a strong state apparatus. And this is why he cares. This is why he's involved more than tech stuff. It all makes sense to me now. All right. In Cohen's word, a good, strong state should see the maintenance and extension of capitalism as one of its primary duties. In many cases, its first duty. Now, I hate to tell you guys, this has been basically the argument of legal functionaries going all the way back to Hume. Hume was more guilty of it than Smith, to be quite honest. If you think Adam Smith is a bad guy, you didn't really read him. But Hume really is. So this is a long, long dream that is like almost 300 years old and goes back to the origins of capitalism. So if you think this is new, I hate to tell you, what is new is there are ways to achieve it. They've been trying to achieve this since before since before the computer was a nascent thought in Babbage's mind. But anyway. All right. He explicitly credits Thiel for inspiring the idea. You will note the influence of Peter Thiel on state capacity libertarianism, Cohen writes, though I have never heard him frame the issues in this way. Anarcho-capitalism might have been the right label for Thiel's earlier vision, and a lot of these guys' earlier vision, floating platforms in international waters a la Petrie Friedman. But today, many on the tech right see a powerful state as essential. This is why they moved from Milton Friedman and out around to Hans Hermann Hoppe. To police, surveil, and hand out billions in defense contracts. Because that's how all these guys got rich. But Klein's supply-side progressivism and Cohen and Thiel's state capacity libertarianism call for fortifying the state. The key difference is their goals. While Klein wants state capacity to serve public good, his collaborators have something else in mind. The abundance network and the Astroturf strategy. And also hiding as a journalist. Man! Do journalists have a lot to answer for, since it's now such a low-paid job? Only people with sketchy agendas and failed sons of the ultra-rich will attempt to do it. If you don't realize that that's why journalism is so influence-based now, you need to think about the incentive systems here, all right? Because who else can take the risk to get paid like a journalist, which is usually pretty poorly, and work up the old-fashioned way? Because journalism used to be one of the few, like, writing-based professions that can be done by working class people, but that's been over since the aughts, even since a little before then, the consolidation of the presses, in which case journalism became a fail-son strategy for influence. I mean, after all, Anderson Cooper is a Rockefeller. But anyway, that's not really an argument that I made there. It's just a point. At a meeting for effective accelerationists in San Francisco, lovely. A sect of AI advocates who push total deregulation, Gary Tan laid out his vision. If we can build here, we're going to take over the whole world. We're going to take over every nation in the world. Tan wasn't joking. He spoke at Srinivasan's Network State Conference and posted a thinly veiled death threats against 7 progressive supervisors. With a resume like that, it's easy to see why abundance-aligned groups might prefer Ezra Klein as their public face. Since 2022, tech billionaires like Tan have funneled money into San Francisco projects, bankrolling the recalls of DAs Chessie Bolden and the school board members, helping oust Democratic Socialist Dean Preston in favor of moderate candidates pushing right-wing policies like drug testing welfare recipients. The Abundance Network, founded by Zach Rosen, former CEO of Pantheon, is one of several tech-aligned groups that spent over $20 million in 2024 cycle, along with Growth SF, Together SF, Neighbors for a Better San Francisco. Local watchdogs called them the Astroturf Network. In 2023, backed by crypto and DeFi donors, they helped create a tech-powered takeover at San Francisco's Democratic Party. When both parties are responding to the same donors, you don't really have two parties, do you? You have two different styles of management. All right, anyway. Top donors to the Abundance Network are Bloomberg. Yay, Bloomberg. 25 million. Chris Larson, Ripple, 900,000. Narkel Carpenters Union. That's weird. 526K. Eric and Jeffrey Lawson. Jeffrey owns The Onion. Erica works at UCSF. 224,000. Jeffrey Lawson's become a weird figure in left-wing politics. I'll come back to that. Anyway, Dignity CA SIU 2015, 150K. Philip Dreyfus, hedge fund manager, 150K. Jesse Pollock, Coinbase, 145K. Tony Zhu, DoorDash, 100K. MM Shear, Y Combinator, 100K. Oakland Police Officers Association, 100K. Rosen is the co-founder of CA YIMBY, a pro-abundance nonprofit. The other co-founder is Nat Friedman, an investor in California Forever. The broader YIMBY movement traces back to 2014 when Yelp CEO Jeremy Stoppelman gave a grant to Sonia Truos, a local anarcho-capitalist with an organization called SF Barf, which makes the YIMBY faction and the DSA in New York real worrying, but we'll come back to that. The marriage of tech money, zoning, and Bay Area fringe ideologies continues to evolve. The effective altruists, my least favorite people, who you look up to, some of my least favorite ethical theorists. All right. Thank you, Peter Singer. May you... Anyway, I'm not going to finish that. Redacted. In 2015, effective altruism had two large donors. One of them, Sam Bankman-Fried, you know that guy, is now in prison for decades with Diddy pending a Trump pardon. The other is Dustin Moskovitz, a billionaire co-founder of Facebook and the second largest donor to the Democratic Party. Sam Bankman-Fried also donated a ton of basically illegal donations to the Democratic Party. That's actually interesting and should be talked more about. But anyway, he keeps a low profile, but has become one of Silicon Valley's leading anti-Musk voices. Much of the founding for the Abundance Organization's conferences and initiatives come from Moskowitz's EA nonprofit Open Philanthropy, which has included a large grant announced in tandem with Klein's book. Klein is no stranger to EA, is a co-founder of Future Perfect and EA Vertical at Vox, which received a large grant from Bankman-Fried. You know what being under 30 means today? That you're probably going to end up in federal prison and then pardoned by a conservative politician. But anyway, he's interviewed multiple representations of ultra philosophy, including Royal McArskill, who formerly served as a moral advisor to Sam Bankman-Fried. That's funny. About the ethical case for prioritizing the far future, the very far future, not climate change, but digital humans who live in outer space. On Pod Save America, one of my least favorite podcasts, Klein bemoaned that liberals have found themselves in a dysfunctional relationship with the future. Yeah, they have. Almost no one has it. But these guys' vision of the future is actually shit. So let's lean on that. Seeming to borrow from McArkel's rhetoric, critics of long-termism argue focusing on the distant future may divert needed attention from injustices of today, like fantasizing about space Ozempic while ICE deports students. I mean, yeah. I'm a critic of both long-termism and short-termism, and that's gonna, I guess I'm a medium-termist, but nonetheless. Star Pills weight loss medication produced in space is an idea mentioned in the intro to Abundance. Are you fucking serious? Okay, I'm gonna have to read this book just to destroy it. Effective altruism and long-termism aren't inherently fascist. No, they're not. I mean, they're really not. I wouldn't know how you would actually do that. But their utilitarian foundation has attracted incredible adherents, including eugenicists and race scientists. I mean, so did socialism at one point. But anyway, that's a distraction. None of these guys are socialists today, really. One of the major leaders in long-termism, Nick Bostrom, I know that guy. I read his book over a decade ago. And man, is it like an advertisement for stuff that will probably never happen. Is a key proponent of these views. An EA conference in 2023 and 2024, speakers like Dylan Matthews from Vox and Jeremiah Johnson from the Center for New Liberalism shared the stage with known eugenicists. Elon Musk himself hinted at aligning with long-termism, calling it a close match for my philosophy, aka distracting the shit out of people with stuff that is unlikely to happen. All right. Open Philosophy has provided funding to the NISCON Center, the Breakthrough Institute, the Inclusive Abundance Initiative, and the Abundance Institute, and the Institute for Progress. It's not all space and sci-fi. To Stand Together Trust, a key component in the Koch network, also provided funds for the abundance agenda groups. Oh man, Koch's and their money. That's the other people who give all kinds of people money, including sometimes leftists, in quotation marks. Stop the progressives. NISCON envisions a new right liberal alliance centered around abundance and opposing the left, arguing that by working within a political party, new model supply-siders can advance their cause and break free from the traditional left-right polarization. Meaning that they always have someone they can pay to shut the fuck up. That's what that really means. But anyway, so what does this really mean to collaborate with the tech right? Socially, it's awkward. Derick Thompson came over fire for his decision to promote abundance on the podcast of Richard Hanania, a conservative journalist who was ousted for pseudonymously posting extensive white supremacist content on Richard Spencer's website. Although he's pivoted away from Trump lately. We'll see how long that lasts. Hanania, who received funding and praise from Thiel and Andreessen, is a key figure in the rationalist circles and has shared his passion for race and IQ conversations, a kind that Klein denounced in 1918 on Sam Harris's podcast. Harris has also repeatedly promoted effective altruism. Harris has been a villain since 2003. He just seems less villainous than some of the wackadoos in his intellectual dark web, which fell apart during COVID because it was clear that many of them were just out-and-out conspiracy cranks. But anyway, Klein saw in his interview with Thiel affiliate Tyler Cohen recently to promote abundance. Cohen asked, what if someone said a true abundance agenda? Of course, this would never happen, but it's basically zero out Medicare and Medicaid, which is a lot of money, and spend all of that on science and birth subsidies and Social Security for that matter. Why isn't this on the true abundance agenda? Klein, the true abundance agenda would be to zero out Medicare and Medicaid and spend. Cohen, Christian Scientists, they still have decent life expectancy. People would have maybe higher Social Security. They could still buy health care. We'd have many more people. It'd be much a younger society, more dynamic society. Scientific advances would mean we'd cure more diseases, forms of cancer. People probably live longer. Why not do that? Just go crazy on innovation and number of births. Oh, Cohen, you made so much more sense 10 years ago. And even then, you didn't make that much sense. You're still a right-wing hack. All right. Klein appears queasy at the question and finally lands on, it doesn't fit my politics. Abundance is undeniably a Silicon Valley interest, especially with Trump's policies like restricting H-1B visas, although he hasn't really done that, and imposing tariffs. Alienating tech billionaires, Trump might be the dreaded degrowther. Thompson has said as much to through Srinivasan, I can't say that name, on Twitter. While Klein is meeting with legislatures and knowing or unknowingly enacting a plan the Abundance Network made for him in 2023 to create a Klein-led abundance faction, Matt Iglesias, who recently did a fundraiser for a cryptocurrency-friendly candidate with Andreessen, expressed support for Freedom Cities as well as network state projects in Northern California. God damn it. I mean, this is the guy who I remember my first encounter with was making the progressive case for sweatshops and Slate in the aughts during the Bush administration. Or the early Obama administration. I'm pretty sure it's the Bush administration. I've hated Matthew Iglesias since I've known about him. And I've known about him for 2 decades. All right. Why he has any pull, as I said about Noah Smith, I also say about Matthew Iglesias, if he did not exist, the Rand Corporation would have to invent him. All right. It would be surprising to see overabundance liberals like Iglesias and embracing privatized charter cities and special economic zones. In Kamala Harris' administration, Klein and Thompson's book and tour might serve as a policy template, but under President Trump, it's a call for tech billionaires, including many who donated to Trump, to fund real estate lobbying groups and neoliberal Democrats like abundant faction hero, Democratic Governor Jared Polis, who this week praised Argentina's anarcho-capitalist Javier Milei. Oh, God. Yeah, that's gone well. Under Milei, poverty in Argentina has surged to 53%. The growth of Argentina's economy without distribution hasn't met the abundance for all. Other abundance Democrats have their own baggage. Richie Torres, one of Congress's first abundance agenda promoters, is a Silicon Valley favorite who joined with the Republicans to create a congressional cryptocurrency caucus. Torres has also been criticized for spreading conspiracy theories about student protesters during the Trump administration's crackdown. Yeah, I don't know why people think you're going to reform this Democratic Party. But anyway, what's most troubling, however, is that Klein and Thompson seem to be arguing a case that doesn't square with their own liberal politics. If regulations are the primary obstacle to abundance, why not advocate for anarcho-capitalism? Can anyone truly believe that the Democrats could out-Doge Doge? Elon Musk has amplified chips of Klein lamenting regulatory processes as to say, yes, I'm slashing your administrative states, but abundance isn't coming. Klein and Thompson are now touring the country promoting their case against environmental regulations, while Musk enthusiastically guts the EPA. Basically, it doesn't matter now, the EPA. Both Klein and the tech writer agree on one thing: democracy interferes with the market's ability to generate abundance. While Klein's version is more toned down, limiting community input on development, his allies on the tech right are willing to go much further. They really want to stop Schumpeter from being right. If you don't know, Joseph Schumpeter was an Austrian economist, not really a leftist, although many social democrats ironically ended up liking him in the mid-20th century, who predicted that democracy would lead to a socialist-like policy, probably faster than socialism would, because more and more people would benefit from it, and the instability of capitalism would make such stability unattractive, although it would limit capitalist growth and development. That was Schumpeter's argument. He was in dialogue with the German socialist movements around the German historical school, and I should use socialists there in quotations advisedly, because a lot of the German historical school, by the time that Schumpeter was interacting with them, ended up being Nazis. But nonetheless, all right. Both Klein and Techrat agree on one thing: democracy interferes with the market's ability to generate abundance. While Klein's vision is more turned down, limiting community input on development, he really hates community input. His allies on the tech right are willing to go much further. Klein is merely offering a diet version of the agenda. Abundance for whom? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have been attracting large crowds on their fighting oligarchy where to go from here tour. 600,000 in Los Angeles, 200,000. Excuse me, I totally said that wrong. It's not 600,000. 36,000 in Los Angeles, 23,000 in Tacoma, Washington, 15,000 in Tempe, Arizona. It was like 20,000 in Salt Lake. 2,600 in Altoona, Washington, a town of less than 10,000 residents. These crowds were a wide mix of young and old, although they were more old than I was expecting here anyway. Many of them didn't vote for Bernie Sanders at the time he ran for president. In Los Angeles, Sanders accused Musk of decimating the Social Security Administration, a warning that the services would hurt the elderly and disabled. The crowd erupted, shouting "monster." "I'm watching my country being taken away from me," said a woman in Omaha, where 2,500 people showed up. "I needed hope." Yeah, you do need hope, but you're probably not going to find it in these Bonapartist-like figures running for executive like this. I wish it was different. Although Bernie's not running for president again, but he seems to be clearing up for AOC to do so. "I work 2 jobs, a full-time and a part-time. I literally work 7 days a week as a nurse." A woman told a reporter outside a rally in Denver, Colorado, which drew over 30,000 people. "We have an autistic 6-year-old twins. We have to pay for their speech therapy, occupational therapy, especially with the Department of Education being dismantled. They are very much against the unionizing of nurses," a Denver nurse explained. "They made it where you have skeleton crews, but you can't do anything about it. Colorado is one of the states hardest hit in the country, hardest states in the country to unionize. It requires 2 separate votes, and the second must pass a 75% supermajority. We got our collective bargaining stuff stricken from us. That there's a referendum to return it that's so far becoming successful here in Utah. But I'm going to say I can foresee the Utah legislature backing down on this and then passing something like the Colorado rules in response, which would still decimate the unions here. Now, Democrats in the legislature finally have to vote to repeal the law, but Governor Jared Polis, abundance evangelist, is threatening to veto the repeal. Excuse me. Fuck all you fucking oligarchs that are trying to run this country, the nurse asked, because you're not it. You're not the country we are. The abundance faction and the tech funding billionaires may be fighting for a future of the Democratic Party, but the nurses, teachers, the seniors, and the Medicaid recipients are fighting for the present. They seem less enthusiastic about permit reform than the possibility of an opposition party who will tell Musk, Teal, and maybe even Klein to go to Mars because the Earth belongs to the rest of us. And while I like that this sentiment is generally true, I don't think Bernie Sanders and AOC are going to be enough. And I don't think you can just fight the Democratic Party this way, because there's no place for the left to go to oppose the Democratic Party if it goes this way. And the preponderance of money is on their side. So I like Kate's analysis here, but I think you have to go deeper in the problems of the Democratic Party to deal with this. But of course, there's going to be some people who talk about how we need to do this for Trump, or Trump is going to break these log jams or whatever. People who tie themselves to demagogues, and some of them will even have the audacity to pretend to be Marxists, breaking everything that Marx said about politics down into nothing, into vague hopes and nostrums that they can't even really fully address. Go look up how Marx felt about anyone in the socialist movement running for the executive branch. Look it up. But anyway, bad times, peeps. Bad times. And you guys need a strategy of patience, not flipping out every time there's an electoral debate for the presidency, because these other people have had a strategy of patience and they have money. You're going to need a strategy of patience and people and money, but more people. Just ending on these hopes here, and then the fact that there is a real decidable people who are on our side, but the Democrats are continually unpopular because they're promoting shit like this. Well, we'll see. Anyway, hopefully I will do more of this in the future. I want to talk to Kate Willett. I've actually invited Emil Torres and Kate Willett to my show. We're in negotiations about that now. So hopefully you'll hear more from them. But if not, check out her work, check out her podcast, Dystopia Now, and check out the New International. I think they're doing some good work. Protect your peace.